It was the year 1232, and the formidable Mongol army had reached the formidable defenses of Jin, the capital of the Jurchen-led Jin dynasty. For a relentless decade, they had ruthlessly conquered everything in their path. Entire kingdoms crumbled under the relentless charge of their cavalry. Cities that dared to resist were reduced to ashes and distant memories. There was no exaggeration in calling the Mongols the most terrifying military force the world had ever witnessed. Then, with abrupt suddenness, the heavens seemed to rip apart. A thunderous explosion convulsed the very ground with an intensity that Mongol warriors had never before encountered. The deafening sound traveled 30 meters across the expanse. In mere moments, several Mongol soldiers simply vanished. They weren't cut down by swords or pierced by arrows. They were obliterated, turning to dust, consumed by a power that appeared to emanate from the very depths of hell. The surviving warriors froze in their tracks. Their horses reared in terror. For the first time in all their conquests across Asia, the Mongols experienced something profoundly unfamiliar: pure, overwhelming dread. This was their inaugural confrontation with gunpowder weaponry, and what unfolded next would irrevocably alter the course of military history. However, what truly makes this narrative so compelling is the Mongols' unexpected reaction, far from what one might anticipate from warriors facing an incomprehensible new technology. Their response unveiled a deeper truth about why they had subdued half the world, and it ultimately facilitated the proliferation of this terrifying invention across 3 continents. Allow me to transport you to the genesis of this tale, for to comprehend the events at Jin, one must first grasp the immense power the Mongol Empire had amassed. In 1206, a man named Temujin unified the fractious tribes of Mongolia and adopted the title of Chinggis Khan, meaning universal ruler. This was no mere boastful appellation. During his lifetime, he and his armies subjugated territories stretching from Korea to Eastern Europe, forging an empire that eclipsed Rome at its zenith. The Mongol war machine operated with terrifying efficiency. Their mounted archers could unleash arrows with lethal precision while maintaining incredible speed. They were capable of covering up to 100 miles in a single day, materializing where their adversaries least anticipated them. Their intelligence networks were so sophisticated that they frequently possessed more knowledge of enemy fortifications than the defenders themselves. Yet, what truly distinguished the Mongols was their unique approach to innovation. They were not staunch traditionalists. When they encountered a useful technique or technology, they swiftly assimilated it. They recruited engineers from every conquered populace. The Mongols mastered siege warfare from Chinese experts, adopted Syrian metallurgy, and integrated Persian administrative systems. This adaptability was their clandestine weapon, though they hadn't fully recognized it yet. They would soon need it. By 1211, Chinggis Khan had set his sights on the Jin dynasty, which held sway over northern China. The Jin were Jurchens who had themselves seized these lands from the Chinese Song dynasty decades prior. They represented formidable adversaries, possessing robust fortifications and advanced technologies inherited from Chinese civilization. The Mongols achieved successive victories in open combat. However, walled cities presented a formidable challenge. It was at this juncture that the Mongols made a pivotal decision. They began to recruit Chinese siege engineers, enlisting their services either through defection or capture, along with their expertise in catapults, battering rams, and other siege engines. During those early campaigns against the Jin, roughly from 1211 to 1230, there is no definitive evidence of the Mongols encountering gunpowder weapons on a significant scale. They were triumphing consistently and had no reason to suspect the Jin possessed weaponry unlike anything they had faced before. To grasp what the Mongols were about to confront, we must delve into one of history's most peculiar inventions. Gunpowder was not conceived by military engineers striving to craft superior weapons. It was serendipitously discovered by Taoist alchemists in pursuit of the elixir of eternal life. Pause to consider this irony for a moment. Individuals seeking immortality instead created history's deadliest invention. During the Tang dynasty in the 9th century, these alchemists blended various chemicals in their quest for spiritual enlightenment and longevity. They combined saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal in differing ratios, and the outcomes were, quite literally, explosive. A Taoist text from the mid-9th century cautioned alchemists against mixing these particular substances, because smoke and flames result, so that their hands and faces have been burnt, and even the whole house where they were working burned down. The Chinese named this perilous concoction huoyao, which translates to fire drug or fire medicine. Initially, gunpowder was primarily used for entertainment, deployed in fireworks for the imperial court and pyrotechnic displays intended to impress onlookers. But military officials soon recognized its immense potential. During the reign of the Southern Song dynasty, military engineers were busily creating weapons that capitalized on the unique characteristics of gunpowder. Initially, the objective wasn't to generate powerful blasts. The primary focus lay on gunpowder's incendiary potential, its capacity to produce an intense, unquenchable flame. The first examples of such armaments were aptly named fire arrows, which featured small gunpowder charges intended for igniting enemy fortifications. Soon after, the fire lance emerged, a spear or pole fitted with a bamboo or metal tube filled with gunpowder. When ignited, it projected flames stretching 10 feet or more. Imagine confronting such weaponry in close quarters. It could inflict burns before you even entered sword range. By 1044, an imperial official compiled the Wujing Zongyao, a military treatise that, for the first time, provided detailed descriptions of gunpowder formulas and various explosive devices. Among these were bombs with truly menacing names, such as the bomb of the darkness of fiery flying sands and the unconquerable bomb of the fierce heaven flame. However, these early designs utilized soft casings made of bamboo or paper. While they undoubtedly inspired terror, they had yet to play decisive roles in battles. A revolution occurred in the 10th and early 11th centuries when engineers of the Jin and Song empires developed iron bombs, transforming warfare entirely. A metallic casing could withstand considerably greater pressure before rupturing, resulting in a much more potent explosion. Upon detonation, these bombs didn't just produce fire and smoke, they created devastating shrapnel capable of piercing both armor and flesh. The most formidable of these devices was the Gan Tian Lei, translatable as the thunder-shaking heaven bomb. According to the official history of the Jin dynasty, these bombs were described as an iron vessel filled with gunpowder. Upon ignition and discharge, it would explode with a thunderous roar, audible for 100 li, scorching an area of land exceeding half a mu, and its fire could even penetrate iron armor. 100 li is approximately 30 miles, and half a mu is about 1/16 of an acre. These were not mere firecrackers. They were the medieval counterparts of hand grenades and artillery shells. In 1231, just a year before the siege of Kaifeng, these thunder bombs were first employed in battle when a Jin general used them against a Mongol warship, utterly destroying it. Although the Mongols had encountered gunpowder weapons before, they had not yet grasped the full extent of the threat. This understanding would soon arrive with devastating force. Fast forward to April 1232. A Mongol army, led by the distinguished commanders Subutai and Genghis Khan's son Tolui, completely encircled Kaifeng. The Mongols were not operating at half strength. They had constructed over 100 kilometers of intricate fortifications around the city, including palisades, watchtowers, trenches, and guard posts. They forced Chinese prisoners, men, women, and children, to haul supplies and fill ditches. Within the city walls, 300,000 Jin defenders braced themselves for what they knew would be a brutal siege. The Mongols were confident in their victory, and why shouldn't they be? They had never failed to capture cities they intended to conquer. Their siege engines were ready, their troops positioned. Now their ranks even included Chinese engineers, individuals privy to the secrets of siege warfare. As they initiated their assault, hurling stones and arrows at the walls, they anticipated the usual resistance. A deluge of arrows, boiling oil, desperate sorties from the defenders. Instead, they faced genuine hell. A Jin scholar who survived the siege recounted the events in his memoirs. The assault on the city walls intensified, and bombs rained down as the enemy advanced. The Mongols had seen bombs before, having encountered incendiary weapons. But what transpired next surpassed all their previous experiences. From within the walls, Liu Qi notes, the defenders responded with a gunpowder bomb known as the thunder-shaking heaven bomb. Whenever Mongol troops encountered it, several people were instantly reduced to ashes. Allow me to paint a more vivid picture, because the historical accounts, dry as they may seem, describe something truly horrific. When these iron bombs detonated, they produced a sound so loud it could be heard 30 miles away. A flash of light was blinding. The shockwave could knock people off their feet, and the explosion itself, Liu Qi's description is chillingly simple. Men were turned to ashes. Not killed, not wounded, but utterly annihilated. The official Jin history elaborates further on the bomb's effects. The fire can penetrate even through iron armor. Consider the implications of this. The Mongols wore armor capable of stopping arrows and sword blows. This was inconsequential. The explosive force and burning gunpowder could tear straight through metal. A Ming dynasty official named Han Chun, centuries later, stumbled upon one of these bomb caches and described the iron containers as resembling a sealed rice bowl with a finger-sized opening at the top, perfectly sized for a fuse. Despite its basic design, the effects were devastating. What truly stands out, though, was the Mongols' reaction. They didn't simply panic and retreat. While undoubtedly shocked, historical accounts confirm this was unlike anything they'd encountered before. Their horses reared and bolted, and even their notoriously fearless warriors hesitated. Yet, shock isn't defeat, and this situation revealed the true genius of their military strategy. Following the initial bombardments, Mongol commanders convened to dissect the problem. Like all great military leaders, they meticulously studied the challenge, observing the bomb's effects, range, and deployment methods. From this analysis, they formulated a counter-strategy. The Mongols constructed elaborate shields from several layers of thick ox hides, providing inches of depth. These were then used to protect their siege engineers, who advanced directly toward the city walls. Using these mobile leather screens as cover, they began excavating defensive niches at the base of the fortifications with the goal of undermining the wall's foundations until it collapsed. For a while, this approach proved surprisingly effective against conventional weaponry. Mongol engineers could approach the walls and begin their work relatively unmolested. However, the Jin defenders also adapted. According to official Jin history, they attached iron ropes to heaven-shaking thunder bombs. These bombs were lowered along the walls, and when they reached the sappers' working positions, they detonated, obliterating the excavators and their leather screens instantly, leaving no trace. Consider the psychological warfare at play here. Imagine being a Mongol warrior, accustomed to conquering lands from China to Persia, having faced every conceivable weapon, spears, swords, arrows, cavalry charges. Now, you're ordered to crouch beneath a leather shield while the enemy lowers iron bombs on chains from above, bombs that promise to incinerate you and everyone nearby upon detonation. Would you obey? The Mongols did, a testament to their absolute military discipline. But for the first time, that discipline was tested by raw terror. The Jin possessed a second gunpowder weapon that instilled even greater fear in the Mongols, the fire lance. This consisted of a tube, either bamboo or metal, packed with gunpowder and affixed to a spear. When ignited, it projected flames over 10 feet from its tip. One historical account notes that each soldier carried a small iron pot to maintain a constant flame, likely hot coals. When combat commenced, the lance would erupt with fire for over 10 feet, and the tube itself remained intact after the gunpowder was expended. Historical records include a telling detail. While Mongol soldiers generally showed disdain for most Jin weaponry, they apparently held a profound fear of the flying fire lance and the heaven-shaking thunder bomb. This is remarkable. The Mongols, who had confronted everything from war elephants to Greek fire, who had forged the largest empire in history up to that point, evidently feared these two gunpowder weapons above all others. Kaifeng endured a year-long siege, claiming hundreds of thousands of lives, primarily from starvation rather than combat. The Jin emperor eventually fled, and the city finally surrendered in May 1233. Yet, from the Mongol perspective, this siege differed significantly from all their previous conquests. They didn't merely overwhelm the defenders with superior tactics and bravery. They were forced to contend with weaponry that could end their lives without warning, denying them the chance to employ their legendary combat prowess. And this is where the story takes its most crucial turn. Less capable conquerors might have reacted to this terrifying new technology with fear and avoidance, dismissing gunpowder weapons as cowardly or dishonorable. The Mongols, however, did the opposite. They decided that if they couldn't defeat these weapons, they would master them. If you enjoyed this in-depth analysis of military history, please do me a favor and hit the like button. Such detailed historical research requires considerable time, and your support helps me continue creating these videos. Also, leave your comments below. I'm keen to hear your thoughts on the Mongol approach to innovation. Would you have reacted similarly in their situation? Now, let's return to how the Mongols became masters of the very weapons that had so deeply unnerved them. Their approach to gunpowder technology was pragmatic and equally ruthless. They captured Chinese engineers possessing the knowledge to manufacture gunpowder and construct these formidable weapons. Some were drawn in willingly, swayed by promises of wealth, or convinced that resistance was futile. Others were forcibly pressed into service, their knowledge considered too valuable to let slip away. The Mongols were unconstrained by methods in their pursuit of expertise. Their sole focus was on achieving results. By the time Kaifeng was besieged, historical records confirm that the Mongols were already deploying gunpowder weapons themselves. Liu's memoirs document bombs being exchanged between both sides during the assault. The Mongols had mastered the production of their own explosive ordnance and learned to launch them using catapults. This wasn't mere imitation, but rather the genesis of a process of development and refinement that would characterize their use of gunpowder for decades. Following the collapse of the Jin dynasty in 1234, the Mongols shifted their attention to the Song dynasty, which controlled southern China. The Song far surpassed the Jin in their advancement of gunpowder technology, having honed their weaponry through decades of research and warfare. They possessed rockets, improved bombs, more potent fire lances, and possibly even early versions of true firearms that utilized gunpowder's explosive force to propel projectiles rather than just fire. One might expect the Mongols to have learned their lesson and approached the Song with caution. Instead, they initiated one of the longest and most brutal campaigns in their history. The complete subjugation of the Song dynasty spanned 45 years, from 1235 to 1279. In contrast, the Mongols conquered most of Rus, Eastern Europe, and Central Asia in less time than it took them to subdue southern China. Gunpowder weaponry played a critical role in this stubborn resistance. Nung Osada vividly illustrates the extent of Mongol learning. From 1268 to 1273, they laid siege to the fortress cities of Xiangyang and Fancheng, which guarded the passage south towards the Yangtze River. This siege endured for 5 years, becoming one of the most protracted in global history. Both factions extensively employed gunpowder weapons. The Song utilized their entire arsenal: fire lances, explosive bombs, rockets, and perhaps even early cannons. The Mongols retaliated in kind, but also exhibited innovative thinking. They enlisted 2 Muslim engineers, one from Persia and another from Syria, who helped them construct advanced counterweight trebuchets. While not gunpowder weaponry themselves, these trebuchets could hurl larger projectiles, including gunpowder bombs, farther and with greater precision than older traction trebuchets. One report states that when the machine fired, the noise shook heaven and earth, and whatever it hit was destroyed and utterly ruined. The Mongols were now combining traditional siege engineering with gunpowder weapons, forging a hybrid approach that leveraged both technologies. However, what truly impresses me about the Mongol adaptation to gunpowder is their refusal to abandon what initially brought them success. Less formidable military powers might have been so awestruck by gunpowder that they would have attempted to completely restructure their armies around it. The Mongols did not make this mistake. They remained primarily a cavalry force, with their mounted archers still forming the core of their army. Gunpowder weapons, though formidable, were predominantly used in siege operations and defensive positions. The Mongols grasped what many military historians have noted. In the 13th century, gunpowder weapons were still too unreliable, too slow to reload, and too cumbersome to replace cavalry on the open battlefield. The Mongols created something distinctive, a hybrid military force that merged the mobility and striking power of mounted archers with the destructive siege capabilities of gunpowder weapons and Chinese engineering. By the final conquest of the Song dynasty in 1279 and the establishment of the Yuan dynasty, Mongol armies included Mongol cavalry, Chinese infantry units equipped with gunpowder weapons, and specialized engineering corps capable of producing and deploying explosives. They then disseminated this knowledge throughout their empire, which was the largest contiguous land empire in human history, stretching from Korea to Hungary. It is here that the story truly achieves global significance. Consider what the Mongol Empire represented at its zenith, a colossal communication network linking East Asia with the Middle East and Eastern Europe. The famed Silk Road was not solely for silk. It was a thoroughfare for ideas, technology, and innovation. Now, having mastered gunpowder weaponry, the Mongols carried this technology wherever their armies trod. When the Mongols invaded Japan in 1274 and again in 1281, they brought gunpowder weapons with them. Japanese historical accounts, particularly illustrated scrolls from the period, clearly depict Mongol soldiers utilizing explosive bombs against the samurai. Having never encountered such gunpowder weapons before, the samurai recounted their experiences with a blend of reverence and dread. A renowned scroll vividly depicts a Mongol bomb detonating amidst Japanese defenders, its explosion rendered with astounding artistic detail. In the Middle East, evidence of the Mongols transmitting knowledge of gunpowder surfaces in Arabic texts from the late 11th century. Around 1280, the Arab engineer Hassan al-Allama compiled a military manual containing gunpowder recipes and descriptions of various weapons. What stands out is his chosen terminology. He refers to saltpeter as Chinese snow and rockets as Chinese arrows. The Arabic and Persian terms for gunpowder, barut in Arabic and daru in Persian, are direct translations of the Chinese huao, meaning fire medicine. This linguistic data powerfully suggests a direct knowledge transfer from Chinese engineers in Mongol service. In Eastern Europe, intriguing but debated evidence of Mongol gunpowder use exists. During the Battle of Legnica in Poland in April 1241, Mongol forces deployed a mysterious weapon that produced a dense, foul-smelling smokescreen. A 15th-century Polish chronicle describes a Mongol standard-bearer shaking a large banner topped with an ugly black head from which a cloud of noxious odor suddenly erupted, enveloping the Poles and nearly incapacitating them, rendering them unable to fight. Some historians, notably Stephen Hall, posited that this could have been a gunpowder-based smoke weapon. While not definitive, the evidence is highly suggestive. We know for certain that by the end of the 10th and beginning of the 11th centuries, gunpowder knowledge had spread across Eurasia. European sources mention gunpowder as early as 1267, when Roger Bacon wrote about it in his Opus Majus. By the 1320s, illustrations in European manuscripts distinctly showcase gunpowder weapons, cannons, and primitive firearms. Mongol conquests were not the sole factor in the dissemination of gunpowder technology, but they made an absolutely critical contribution to its accelerated transmission across 3 continents. One aspect deserves more attention than it typically receives. The Mongols actively fostered the further development of gunpowder weaponry after the establishment of the Yuan dynasty in China. They didn't just preserve existing knowledge, they stimulated innovation. During the 10th and 11th centuries, Chinese engineers under Mongol rule developed increasingly potent bombs with names reminiscent of video game items, such as the 10,000 enemy-destroying bomb and the magic bomb that burns bones and smashes with fire oil. They created the first true rockets, which saw battlefield use from the mid-11th century. They experimented with more powerful gunpowder compositions and embarked on developing weapons specifically designed to propel projectiles rather than just fire, the ancestors of true guns and cannons. The Yuan dynasty invested substantial resources in gunpowder research and development. This went beyond mere military advantage. The Mongols, perhaps more clearly than any empire preceding them, grasped that technological superiority served as a force multiplier, even though they were outnumbered by their Chinese subjects. Advanced military technology helped them maintain control. This leads to one of history's great ironies, which, in my opinion, is insufficiently emphasized in standard historical accounts. By the 10th century, European powers had advanced gunpowder technology in ways unimaginable to the Chinese and even the Mongols. Europeans developed improved metallurgy for casting cannons. They invented more effective gunpowder compositions through a process called granulation, which significantly boosted its explosive power. They created standardized firearms that could be mass-produced and distributed to large armies. They built their entire military systems around gunpowder weapons, something the Mongols never fully accomplished. And then, in the 19th century, European powers, armed with modern firearms, invaded China, the civilization that had invented gunpowder over a millennium prior. During the Opium Wars, British forces, equipped with advanced rifles and artillery, routed Chinese armies that still largely relied on traditional weapons. The technology that originated in China, disseminated by the Mongols, and which terrified Mongol warriors at Kaifeng in 1232, returned to devastate the land of its birth. I find this reversal deeply significant. It serves as a reminder that initial possession of technology doesn't guarantee a permanent advantage. Innovation is an ongoing process. The Chinese invented gunpowder and developed the first gunpowder weapons, but they did not continue to innovate at the pace that Europeans eventually did. The reasons behind this are intricate and continue to be debated among historians. Some scholars point to the prolonged era of relative tranquility in China after 1760, which reduced the immediate military necessity for innovation. Other researchers highlight divergent cultural attitudes towards merchants and craftspeople, or they delve into the influence of Confucian versus European scientific traditions. However, in my assessment, the Mongol example offers a distinct lesson that remains relevant even today. The Mongols' success didn't stem from their inventiveness. They didn't invent the sophisticated composite bow. It was an inheritance from their steppe culture. They neither conceived of siege warfare nor gunpowder. Their triumph was defined by their willingness to absorb, adapt, and implement any technology or method that offered them an advantage. They possessed no cultural impediments to learning from their adversaries. They cared little whether an idea originated from Chinese engineers, Persian metallurgists, or Syrian architects. If it worked, they used it.
This approach starkly contrasts with the way the Chinese treated gunpowder. Despite inventing it and developing formidable weapons, the Chinese never integrated gunpowder as the cornerstone of their military system. This was partly explainable from a practical standpoint. Warfare in China often occurred in the rice paddies and mountainous southern regions, where cavalry and traditional armaments remained highly effective. Yet, part of the reason lay in culture. Traditional Chinese military thought harbored a certain aversion to gunpowder weapons. They were loud, messy, and seemingly reduced warfare to brute mechanical force rather than skill and valor. The Mongols experienced no such hesitation. When they first encountered gunpowder weapons at Jin and witnessed their warriors being incinerated, they didn't retreat to tradition. They didn't conclude that gunpowder was dishonorable or that true warriors should only wield swords and bows.
Their thought was, "This is terrifyingly effective. We must master it immediately." And master it they did. Let's return to the initial question. How did the Mongols react when they first encountered gunpowder? The answer comprises 4 phases, understanding which elucidates much about the reasons for the Mongols' success where many others failed. Firstly, there was shock, pure, unadulterated shock and terror. Historical sources unequivocally confirm this. Warriors who had never shown fear in battle were terrified by this weapon. Thunderous bombs that shook the heavens and flamethrowers were unlike anything they had ever experienced. They killed without warning, denying a warrior any chance to display skill or bravery. This was not cowardice on the part of the Mongols, it was a rational response to an incomprehensible new technology. Secondly, tactical adaptations followed. Even during that same siege, the Mongols developed countermeasures. They devised leather screens to protect their siege engineers and implemented new techniques for undermining walls under bombardment. They didn't merely react emotionally. They analyzed the problem and sought solutions with available means. Thirdly, strategic appropriation occurred. The Mongols didn't just defend against gunpowder weapons. They immediately set about acquiring the knowledge to manufacture them. They captured engineers, seized stockpiles, studied formulas, and within months were using gunpowder weapons themselves. This was not just pragmatism. It was a systematic approach to technology transfer that predated modern military-industrial practices by centuries. Fourthly, and most impressively, integration and development took place. The Mongols didn't simply mimic what the Jin and Song dynasties were doing. They spurred further innovation. They combined gunpowder technologies with their existing strengths: mobility, intelligence gathering, and combined tactics.
In effect, they became the conduit that spread gunpowder technologies across Eurasia, fundamentally transforming warfare on 3 continents. Compare this to how other civilizations throughout history have reacted to disruptive military technologies. Often, there's denial, a stubborn assertion that the new technology isn't that important, that traditional methods are superior. There's cultural resistance, arguments that the new technology is dishonorable or unfit for true warriors. There's institutional inertia. Existing military structures resist change because change threatens their position and competence. The Mongols bypassed all of this. They moved directly from, "This is terrible and we don't understand it," to, "We must master this immediately," skipping the stages of denial and resistance. This is extraordinary, and it's a significant reason for their creation of the largest empire in history. Before concluding, consider if these patterns extend beyond medieval warfare. We live in an era of disruptive technologies: artificial intelligence, quantum computing, biotechnology, and autonomous systems. Different nations, companies, and institutions are responding to these changes in varied ways. Some eagerly embrace these shifts, while others resist, concerned about ethical implications, cultural appropriateness, or the displacement of existing frameworks. The Mongolian Empire offers an instructive case. Its success during periods of technological advancement stemmed from rapid adoption and assimilation, even when novel technologies appeared formidable or alien. Yet it also highlights another critical aspect. Innovators are not always the ultimate victors. While the Chinese conceptualized gunpowder, Europeans ultimately dominated the era defined by its use. The Mongols themselves invented nothing, but they conquered half the world by mastering the art of learning faster than any civilization before them. So, my question to you, and I genuinely invite your answers in the comments, is this. In today's rapidly evolving technological landscape, do you resonate more with the Chinese innovators who invented gunpowder but didn't fully exploit its potential? Or are you like the Mongols, prepared to embrace and integrate any effective solution, regardless of its origin? I believe this distinction, the willingness to learn from anyone, anywhere, remains a pivotal factor determining success in any competitive environment. The narrative of the Mongols and gunpowder is, at its core, a tale of adaptability, of gleaning knowledge from adversaries, and of the courage to implement novel methods even when they contradict established practices. When the first deafening thunder bombs detonated at Kaifeng, the Mongols could have retreated to tradition, confident in the sufficiency of their cavalry and archers. Instead, they confronted this terrifying new technology and declared, "Teach us." This choice, made amidst a brutal siege nearly 800 years ago, reshaped the world. Gunpowder weaponry diffused across Eurasia with unprecedented speed, radically transforming warfare and, subsequently, all of human civilization. The next time you encounter a groundbreaking new technology, whether in military strategy, business, or daily life, remember those Mongol warriors standing at Kaifeng's walls, witnessing their comrades turn to ash and choosing education over retreat. If this video has sparked a fresh perspective on history, innovation, or how we navigate disruption, please do me a favor. Hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to ensure you don't miss future content. Share this with anyone interested in military history or grappling with disruptive changes in their field. And critically, leave your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and your insights frequently inspire new videos. History isn't just about the past.
It's a laboratory for understanding how humans respond to challenges, and the lessons we acquire can be remarkably pertinent to our contemporary world. The Mongols grasped a fundamental truth. In times of flux, victory isn't achieved by the strongest or the most traditional. It's secured by the most adaptable, by those who learn quickest and integrate new knowledge most effectively. So, who will you be? An innovator resting on past achievements, or someone who perpetually seeks to learn from everyone around them? Share your response below, and let's discuss what the Mongols can teach us about thriving in an era of transformation. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.